Macron is untethered without Angela Merkel, says expert. Sign up for now and never miss the top politics stories again. Subscribe. When you subscribe, we will use the information you provide to send you these. Sometimes they'll include recommendations for other related newsletters or services. Our privacy notice explains more about how we use your data and your rights. You can unsubscribe at any. German Chancellor Angela Merkel announced on Thursday the closure of the borders with the Czech Republic and the Austrian Tyrol, which recorded high rates of coronavirus infections with highly contagious variants. The Czech Republic earlier announced a stricter lockdown in 3 districts, including 2 on the border with Germany, where coronavirus infections have soared above 1 per 1 residents over the past week. The introduction of border controls is required to prevent the virus mutation from being transmitted to Germany, the Interior Ministry spokesman said, adding that details of how strict the measures will be were still being. Now Tobias Hans, the conservative leader of the small region state of Saarland, in the southwest of Germany, said he will be left with no choice but to close his border with France and Luxembourg if infection rates do not slow down. He told German news channel NTV, "If there are glaring differences between the incidences, then we will have no." He stressed that changes could affect border workers. Controls had indeed been reinstated in spring 22 in the Saarland, arousing the anger of those who cross this. German Minister of Health, Jens Spahn, has also said that a reinstatement of controls could not be excluded, but he said at a press conference, "We know what this means for both sides of the border." The day before, the French Minister of Health, Olivier Véran, had estimated that the viral situation in the department of Moselle, bordering the Saarland, was worrying, with more than 3 identified cases of South African and Brazilian. Trending shortly afterwards, the mayor of Metz, François Grosdidier, spoke in favor of a new local. On Thursday, Chancellor Merkel urged Germans to have a little more patience after agreeing with regional leaders to extend a coronavirus lockdown until March 7 and said restrictions would not last a day longer than necessary. Addressing the Bundestag, the lower house of parliament, Mrs. Merkel said the extension was needed to avoid a third wave due to the risk posed by new virus. "I know what we have achieved in our fight against the virus has had, and is still having, a high price," said Merkel. A gradual fall in daily infections has raised pressure for an easing of tight restrictions in place since mid-December, and Mrs. Merkel agreed with state premiers on Wednesday that some schools and hairdressers could open sooner than March 7. Seeking to reassure Germans that the lockdown was helping, Mrs. Merkel said she was aware this was the most serious curtailment of freedoms in post-war Germany. She knew many people were lonely and worried about money and their future. She said, "As a democracy, we have a duty not to keep the restrictions in place for a day longer than is necessary." Europe's biggest economy shrank by 5% last year, and some businesses are dismayed at the latest extension and the lack of a timetable for easing restrictions. A vaccination program offered hope for the coming months, said the German leader, adding that she understood people's disappointment with the rollout, which is far slower than in Britain, Israel and the United States. To avoid a third wave of infections, however, a little more patience was required. She warned, "I don't think that the back and forth, opening up then closing down again, brings more predictability for people than waiting a few days long." On Friday, Mrs. Merkel said Germany will have difficulties making use of all available COVID-19 vaccines in April. Once a 7-day coronavirus incidence of under 35 per 1 people is reached, further relaxations beyond the opening of shops may follow, she added. She said, "For the next opening step after retail, we have to be careful whether we stay stable below 35. When we have opened up shops and we are stable below 35 for 2 weeks, then we can consider that." The number of new daily infections in Germany has been falling, prompting some regional leaders to push for a timetable to ease the lockdown, which has been in place since mid-December. But concerns are growing about the impact of more infectious variants of the virus on case numbers.